The Great Hall was filled with the powerful leaders of the galaxy, alien beings of all shapes and sizes, from towering giants to smaller, more delicate creatures, gathered in silence as the doors to the throne room opened. They had all come to witness the event, the arrival of a human. In the center of the Grand Hall stood Emperor Thrax, the ruler of the known universe. He was tall and imposing, with green scales that shimmered in the soft light of the room. His eyes, a deep shade of crimson, looked down at the human as he walked slowly into the chamber. The human was alone. There was no army, no weapons, no one to protect him. Just one man, walking calmly through the sea of alien leaders. A few of the aliens exchanged quiet whispers. They knew what was about to happen. Earth, the small and insignificant planet, had been sending humans to negotiate with the Galactic Council for years. But no human had ever been taken seriously. They were nothing but pests to the Empire. Weak, primitive creatures, incapable of understanding the power of the galaxy. The human, Captain Elias Gray, stood tall. He wasn't afraid. In fact, he was the least worried of anyone in the room. His dark brown hair was neatly combed, and his blue uniform, simple but clean, fit perfectly against his broad shoulders. There was no sign of fear in his eyes, no hint of hesitation in his step. He had been trained for this moment, and he would not let the Emperor's mocking presence break him. Emperor Thrax raised one of his long, clawed hands and laughed, a deep, booming sound that filled the room. His laughter echoed off the walls, almost shaking the chamber with its force. The other aliens joined in, their cruel laughter mixing with the Emperor's. It was a joke to them, a human, thinking they could stand among the galaxy's finest. They laughed because it was impossible. They laughed because they knew they were stronger, smarter, and more powerful than anything Earth could offer. "Look at this one," Thrax said between chuckles. "A mere human, walking into my throne room as if he belongs here. What do you think you can do, little Earthling? Speak your weak words, and then leave." The Emperor's voice was filled with mockery, his sharp teeth showing as he grinned. The alien leaders all laughed again, some even slapping their knees in amusement. But Elias didn't flinch. He stood still, his eyes locked on the Emperor, unfazed by the ridicule. After a few more seconds, the laughter began to die down. The Emperor raised his hand, signaling the end of the mockery. The room fell silent. Everyone was watching now. Captain Elias Gray had yet to speak. They all wondered what he would say, what words he would use to try and justify humanity's place in the galaxy. But Elias did not speak. Instead, he simply took a step forward, still calm, still collected, as though the laughter hadn't even touched him. He walked slowly, deliberately, his gaze unwavering as he approached the Emperor. No words had been spoken, but there was something in the air, something that made the other aliens pause. The tension was thick, and for a moment, the laughter seemed to die down. Emperor Thrax's expression began to shift. His crimson eyes narrowed as he studied the human before him. There was something different about this one, something that didn't quite fit, something unsettling. "Do you not understand, human?" the Emperor asked, his voice now quieter, more serious. "You are nothing. You are weak. You are insignificant. The galaxy does not care for your kind." Elias still said nothing. The silence between them grew heavier. The Emperor's claws twitched as he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I could crush you in an instant." But Elias did not react. He just stood there, his gaze unwavering, his body tense but still calm. The Emperor blinked, then let out a slow chuckle. He leaned back in his throne, shaking his head. "I see," Thrax said. "You are one of those humans, aren't you? The ones who think they can stand against us. Very well, human. Let's see what you have." Without warning, the Emperor snapped his fingers, and the guards surrounding the room moved into action. They stepped forward, their weapons drawn, but Elias still didn't move. His calm demeanor remained, as though he knew exactly what would happen next. The guards hesitated, unsure of what to do. They had never seen a human act like this before. Most humans would have cowered, begged for mercy, or run away in fear. But Elias was different. He didn't seem to care at all. And that was when the Emperor's expression shifted once more. His eyes widened slightly, as though he had just realized something. Before the Emperor could say another word, the human's eyes flashed, just for a moment. It was so quick that no one in the room could be sure of what they had seen. But something happened. Something strange. The air seemed to thicken, and a sudden wave of pressure slammed into the room. The alien guards froze in place, their weapons shaking in their hands. A feeling of dread washed over them all. It was as though the very atmosphere around them had changed. The Emperor's smug expression faltered for a brief moment, and that was when it happened. The Emperor gasped. His body froze, his eyes wide with shock. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His claws dug into the armrests of his throne as he tried to move, but he couldn't. His face turned pale, and for a moment, it seemed as though the Emperor was struggling. Then, without warning, Thrax crumpled to the floor. The sound of his body hitting the cold stone echoed through the hall. It was a sound that made everyone jump, even the guards. The room went silent, and all eyes turned to the Emperor, who now lay motionless on the ground. For a long moment, no one moved. The alien leaders looked at each other, their faces filled with confusion and fear. The guards lowered their weapons, unsure of what to do. What had just happened? What had this human done? Captain Elias Gray stood perfectly still, his gaze never leaving the fallen Emperor. He looked, almost bored, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the truth was, he had just done something that no one had expected. He had shown them what a human could do when pushed too far, and it was clear now that they had underestimated him. The Emperor's body twitched on the floor. Slowly, he began to stir, his breathing shallow. He opened his eyes and looked up at Elias with fear and confusion. There was no arrogance in his eyes now, only shock. And something else, something that the Emperor had never expected to see from a human. Respect. The Emperor was terrified. He had been laughed at, mocked, and now he lay helpless before the very creature he had dismissed as weak. And in that moment, Elias didn't need to say a word. His actions had already spoken louder than anything he could have said. Elias turned slowly, walking away from the fallen Emperor. The room was still in shock. The alien leaders didn't know what to think. What had just happened? What did it mean for the future of the galaxy? But one thing was clear: the humans were not to be underestimated. And as Elias exited the hall, his steps calm and confident, the echoes of his message would linger in the minds of everyone present. The Emperor had laughed at him. And now, the Emperor was on the floor. The room remained silent as Emperor Thrax struggled to lift himself from the cold stone floor. His once proud posture was gone, replaced by confusion and fear. The alien leaders stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The guards, frozen and unsure, stared at their fallen Emperor. For the first time in his life, Thrax was not in control. The moment seemed to stretch on forever, the tension so thick that it felt like the air had been squeezed out of the room. Then, with a weak groan, Thrax pushed himself up, his body shaking. He stared at Captain Elias Gray, still standing calmly in the center of the room, his face as composed as it had been when he first walked in. What did you do to me?" Thrax's voice was raspy, his usual arrogance gone, replaced by a raw fear that none of the alien leaders had ever seen from him. Elias didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. The message was clear. He wasn't like the other humans the Emperor had encountered. He wasn't weak. And he wasn't afraid. The silence stretched for a moment longer before Elias spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I didn't do anything to you. You did it to yourself. You thought we were weak. You laughed at us." Thrax's breathing was still shallow, his mind racing to understand what had just happened. The power he had felt, the strange pressure that had crushed him without warning, it had come from the human. But how? A soft whisper ran through the room, alien voices exchanging theories. Some believed it was a trick. Some thought Elias had used some form of hidden weapon. But deep down, every one of them knew the truth. This human had done something none of them had ever expected. Thrax slowly stood, his hands trembling as he grasped the edge of his throne for support. His crimson eyes flickered with an unfamiliar emotion. Uncertainty. You think you are powerful because you did, whatever that was, Thrax asked, trying to regain some of his old arrogance. You think you can stand against the power of the entire galaxy? Elias met his gaze without flinching. I don't need to stand against the galaxy. I only need to show you that humans are not weak. And we are not alone. The Emperor narrowed his eyes, his thoughts racing. Earth's strength had always been a mystery to him. He had dismissed them as insignificant, primitive creatures, just like the rest of the species in the galaxy. But now, something was different. Something had changed. Thrax took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His mind flashed back to the early days of his rule, to the countless battles he had fought, the enemies he had crushed. The fear he felt now was unlike anything he had ever experienced. How could this human, this weak, small creature, make him feel this way? It didn't make sense. But Elias was not finished. You have attacked Earth before, Elias continued, his voice steady. You thought we wouldn't fight back. But you were wrong. The room fell silent once more. The Emperor's face twitched as the weight of Elias's words sank in. He had sent his agents to Earth, to weaken the human race, to control them. But every time, the humans fought back. They had defeated invaders. They had defended their world. But Thrax had never seen this level of power. He had never expected this. Elias stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The Emperor's guards tensed, their weapons drawn again, but they didn't move. No one dared to intervene now. You don't understand yet, do you? Elias said softly. You still think you control everything. You still think that the galaxy belongs to you. But the truth is, you've already lost. Thrax's eyes flickered with doubt. He had never been this close to defeat before. And what was worse, he had no idea how to fight back. He had underestimated humanity in ways he never imagined possible. The human before him was not just a symbol of Earth's strength. He was a warning. The Emperor's voice was quieter now, filled with a strange mix of anger and fear. You will pay for this. You and your people. We will destroy you. Elias didn't flinch. He didn't need to. He had heard this before, time and time again. The threats, the promises of destruction. But they didn't scare him. Because Elias knew something Thrax didn't. Earth had something the galaxy didn't expect. Elias was not alone. And neither was Earth. The alien leaders began to murmur, their voices rising with uncertainty. A few exchanged looks, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. They didn't know what to do. What if Elias was right? What if they had made a mistake by underestimating humanity? Thrax clenched his fists, his claws digging into the armrests of his throne. His heart raced, his mind searching for a way to regain control of the situation. But every time he looked at Elias, that deep sense of dread grew stronger. The Emperor had always been in control. He had ruled with an iron fist, crushing enemies, conquering worlds, and building an empire that spanned the galaxy. He had never faced anything like this before. I will make you regret this, Thrax growled through clenched teeth, but his voice lacked the strength it once had. It was a threat, but one that didn't carry the same weight. Elias took a step back, his expression calm, almost serene. I've already won, Emperor. Your threats mean nothing to me. The only thing you have left to lose is your pride. Thrax's anger flared, but before he could speak, Elias turned and walked toward the exit. The guards did not move to stop him. No one moved at all. It was as if they were frozen in place. "Don't forget this moment, Emperor," Elias said over his shoulder, his voice cold and filled with finality. "You will remember this day, the day you laughed at a human." And with that, Elias walked out of the hall, leaving the Emperor and the alien leaders in stunned silence. The doors closed behind him, and the room was still. For the first time in his life, Emperor Thrax felt a sense of doubt. He had always been the one to control the galaxy. He had always been the one to decide the fate of others. But now, standing alone in the empty hall, he realized that his empire, his power, was not as secure as he had thought. Elias Gray had just shown him that there was something stronger than the Emperor's might. There was the human spirit, and it was unstoppable. The hall remained eerily quiet long after Elias had left. Emperor Thrax sat back in his throne, his hands gripping the armrests tightly as his mind raced. His body felt heavy, as though the weight of his failure had already crushed him. The room was filled with alien leaders, but it felt empty to him. The mocking laughter that had once filled the space now seemed distant, like a memory from another life. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the slow, steady breathing of the Emperor, trying to calm himself. But the more he tried, the more he realized something had changed. The galaxy was no longer his to control, and that terrified him. A few minutes passed before one of the leaders, a tall, insect-like alien named Joran, finally spoke. His voice was cautious, yet firm. "Emperor, what just happened? How did he do that?" Thrax didn't answer right away. He couldn't. He didn't understand it himself. He had never felt so powerless. The human, Captain Elias Gray, had done something that defied all logic. Thrax had never believed that humans were capable of anything beyond their pathetic primitive ways. But Elias had proven him wrong, and in doing so, he had shown the Emperor something far more terrifying than any weapon: the possibility that Earth was not weak. The Emperor took a deep breath and slowly stood, his body stiff and aching. He glanced around the room at the alien leaders, their eyes filled with uncertainty. Some looked scared, some looked confused, but none of them looked confident. That alone made Thrax even more uneasy. If his allies, his supporters, were starting to question him, then his power was already slipping away. How did he do it? Joran pressed, taking a step closer to the Emperor. "Is it possible that humans have developed powers we don't know about?" Thrax turned sharply to face him, his eyes flashing with anger. "I don't know," he growled. "But whatever it was not natural. He must have used some kind of weapon or—" "No," Joran interrupted. "It wasn't a weapon. I saw it, too. There was no attack, no blast of energy. It was like the human bent the very air around him." Thrax gritted his teeth. Joran was right. He had felt it, too, the strange, invisible pressure that had built up in the room just before he collapsed. The same feeling that had squeezed the life out of him. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a physical attack. It was something more, something intangible. For the first time in his life, Emperor Thrax had no answers, and that more than anything scared him. He looked around the room at his closest advisors, his most trusted generals. "You are all aware of what happened today," he said, his voice low and filled with anger. "We cannot let this go. A human has humiliated me, and we cannot allow such a thing to happen again." One of the generals, a large, armored alien named Drathak, stepped forward. "Emperor, what do you suggest we do? We cannot just ignore this. If humans are truly capable of this power, then we must act quickly." Thrax's gaze hardened. "Yes," he said, his voice cold. "We will act, but not yet. First, we need to understand what we're dealing with. I will send an investigation team to Earth. We will find out how they did this, and once we know, we will crush them." "But what if they already know we're coming?" Joran asked, his voice uneasy. "What if the humans have been preparing for something like this?" Thrax's eyes narrowed. He hadn't considered that. The humans had already surprised him once. They had defeated invaders, stopped their enemies from taking their planet, and somehow survived against odds that would have destroyed most other species. If they were prepared for an attack, then he might have underestimated them once again. "I will send a message to the Galactic Council," Thrax said, his voice icy with determination. "We need to find out everything we can about Earth's defenses, and we need to know if this human is working with anyone else. We cannot let a single mistake cost us everything." The alien leaders nodded, but a shadow of doubt lingered in their eyes. They were all afraid. They had all seen the power that Elias Gray had displayed, and they all knew that things would never be the same again. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Elias Gray was already planning his next move. After leaving the Emperor's throne room, Elias had returned to his ship, the Defender, a sleek vessel designed for stealth and speed. He knew that the Emperor would not take this defeat lightly. Thrax was powerful, but Elias was not the only one who had learned something from their encounter. The Galactic Empire would not just forget what had happened. Elias sat in the command chair of his ship, staring out into the stars. He had received a message from Earth's Defense Council shortly after his departure from the Emperor's palace. They had been watching the whole exchange from a distance, monitoring the situation. "We're not the only ones watching," Elias muttered to himself, tapping a few commands into his ship's console. "The Empire will come, and they'll come hard." His mind raced as he considered his options. Earth had always been considered weak, a place that the galaxy could overlook. But the events of today had changed everything. Elias had just proven that humans were not weak, and he had shown the galaxy that Earth could fight back. His eyes flicked to a small screen in front of him. A list of Earth's top military leaders and strategists filled the screen. They had already begun formulating a plan. Elias knew that Earth couldn't afford to wait. The Empire's response would be swift, and they would come with everything they had. "We need to prepare," Elias said, his voice steady and resolute. "If Thrax is coming, we need to be ready." As he sent out orders to Earth's defense teams, Elias couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. This wasn't just about defending their planet anymore. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity was capable of more than just survival. This was about proving their place in the universe. But even as he sent the orders, Elias knew that the battle was only just beginning. The Empire would not back down, and he wasn't sure how far they would go to try and crush Earth's spirit. But one thing was certain: he wouldn't let that happen. As the stars stretched out before him, Elias felt a growing sense of determination. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it was time to show them exactly what humans were capable of. The Defender soared through the cold expanse of space, its sleek form cutting through the stars as Captain Elias Gray stared at the galaxy around him. It felt different now. Every star, every planet, every distant moon seemed to carry weight, as if the future of Earth hung in the balance. Thrax, the Emperor, had been humiliated in front of his allies, and Elias knew that there would be no forgiveness from the Galactic Empire. They would come for Earth, and they would come with everything they had. Elias couldn't let that happen. He had to be ready. Back on Earth, the defense teams had already begun to mobilize. All across the planet, humans were working together, gathering resources, and preparing for the fight that Elias knew was coming. They were used to defending themselves from smaller threats, raiders, invaders, and the occasional alien force. But this was different. This was an entire empire. The Defender was on its way to Earth's outer defenses, where Elias had arranged a secret meeting with Earth's top military leaders. He needed to coordinate their next steps. The message from the Galactic Empire had already arrived. They were preparing for retaliation, and they would stop at nothing to crush humanity's resistance. Elias had known that the moment he faced Emperor Thrax, the battle was far from over. It was only just beginning. As the Defender entered Earth's orbit, Elias looked out the window at the planet below. The sight of Earth, vibrant and blue with its vast oceans and landmasses, reminded him of what was at stake. This was his home. This was where humanity had lived and fought for centuries. It was their cradle, their birthplace, and he would be damned if he let anyone take it from them. The ship's communication system buzzed, breaking Elias's thoughts. "Captain Gray." The voice of General Marlowe echoed through the ship's speakers. "We are ready for your briefing." "Good," Elias responded, standing from his chair. "I'll be there shortly." The Defender descended, cutting through the atmosphere and landing in a hidden military base deep in the mountains. As Elias stepped off the ship, he was met by a team of top strategists, military leaders, and intelligence officers, all waiting for him. They had worked tirelessly in the hours since he left the Emperor's palace, gathering intelligence, preparing defenses, and planning for the worst. General Marlowe, a tall, seasoned leader with a stern face, approached Elias. "We've been monitoring the Empire's movements. They've already started gathering their forces near the Outer Rim. They know we're preparing, and they're not wasting any time." Elias nodded grimly. "We've got one shot at this. If we don't make the first move, they'll overrun us. We can't let that happen." Marlowe turned to the team, his voice commanding. "You heard the captain. We need to make sure Earth's outer defenses are fully prepared. Get everything ready. We don't have much time." The team scattered, going to their stations, but Elias remained behind with Marlowe. "How bad is it?" Elias asked quietly. Marlowe paused, his expression hardening. "The Empire is not like any force we've ever faced. They're well-organized, well-funded, and they have technology far beyond ours. But we have something they don't." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Us," Marlowe said with a determined look. "We have humanity's spirit. We have the will to fight for what's ours. And that's something no amount of technology can beat." Elias smiled, though the weight of the situation still hung over him. "That's what I'm counting on." The next few days were a blur of activity. Teams worked day and night, fortifying Earth's defenses, upgrading weapon systems, and preparing for the coming invasion. Elias spent most of his time strategizing with Marlowe and the other leaders, going over the plans again and again, making sure they were ready for whatever the Empire would throw at them. But despite all the preparation, Elias knew that it wouldn't be enough. The Empire had a vast fleet, a powerful army, and technology that could wipe out entire cities with a single blow. Earth's defense teams were brave, but they were outmatched in every way. The only thing they had going for them was their unity and their unshakable belief in each other. As Elias sat in a war room late one night, reviewing the latest intelligence reports, a soft chime interrupted his thoughts. It was a message from Earth's top scientists. Elias opened the message, and his eyes scanned the report quickly. It was from Dr. Elena Harrow, one of Earth's leading scientists in the field of energy manipulation. "Captain Gray," the message began, "we have made a breakthrough. Our team has developed a new energy shield that could potentially block the Empire's most powerful weapons. We've tested it on a smaller scale, but if we can scale it up in time, it could give us the edge we need in battle." Elias leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. This was the breakthrough they needed. The energy shields could protect Earth's cities and military bases, giving them a fighting chance. He quickly sent a reply. "Dr. Harrow, I need you to work with our top engineers and get this shield operational as soon as possible. We're going to need it." As the hours passed, the shield's technology was improved and refined. The team worked around the clock to perfect it, pushing their limits to ensure that it would be ready for the impending war. The shield was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. They would need time to fully integrate it into their defenses, and time was something they didn't have. Elias stood at the command center, watching the progress unfold on the screens before him. Earth's military leaders had done everything they could to prepare, but Elias knew that there was still one thing they had to do before the battle could begin. They had to make the first move. He turned to Marlowe. "It's time. We can't wait for them to come to us. We have to strike first." Marlowe nodded. Agreed. We'll hit them at their weak points, take out their communications and their supply lines. We cripple their ability to fight back, and then we'll finish them off. Elias's gaze hardened. We'll show them that they made a mistake underestimating us. As the preparations continued, Elias took one last look at the planet below. Earth was ready to defend itself, ready to show the galaxy that it was no longer a weak and insignificant planet. This was humanity's time to prove that they would never be ruled, they would never be conquered. And no matter what the Empire threw at them, they would fight. They would stand tall, and they would win. The stars were silent as the final battle approached. On Earth, the preparations were complete. The energy shields, though not fully perfected, were ready. The military bases were fortified, and Earth's defenders were in position, waiting for the inevitable clash. Captain Elias Gray stood at the front of the command center, staring at the vast displays of Earth's defenses. His mind was focused, but his heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment everything they had worked for would come to a head. He glanced around at the room of commanders, strategists, and technicians. There was no fear in their eyes. They had all been through too much, fought too hard, and sacrificed too much to turn back now. They were ready. Elias turned to General Marlowe, who stood beside him, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "It's time," Elias said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Let's show them that we're not just survivors, we're fighters." Marlowe nodded, his eyes hard with resolve. "We've trained for this. We've prepared. We'll hit them hard and fast, and we'll make sure they know that Earth isn't an easy target anymore." With a final glance at the planet below, Elias gave the command, "Launch the first wave." The signal was sent. Earth's forces, spread across the globe, moved into action. Fighters rose from the airbases, ships launched from hidden spaceports, and the military's most advanced weapons systems powered up. The first wave was small but powerful, designed to take the Empire by surprise, to hit them where it hurt before they could organize a counterattack. In space, the Defender led the charge, its engines roaring as it pierced the void, heading toward the edge of Earth's atmosphere. Elias stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the path ahead. He had no illusions. The Empire would respond quickly and violently, but they had to know that humanity had teeth. As the first wave of Earth's fighters engaged the Imperial fleet, chaos erupted in space. The Empire's forces, though vast, were unprepared for the sheer speed and coordination of the human attack. Fighters darted through the darkness, dodging incoming fire, taking out key targets with precision. The energy shields were already in place, protecting Earth's cities and military installations, and they withstood the barrage of enemy fire. On the ground, the battle was just as intense. Alien invaders, powerful and relentless, landed in cities around the world, but they were met with fierce resistance. Earth's soldiers, equipped with advanced weapons and backed by the resolve of their people, pushed back the attackers. The Empire's overwhelming numbers meant they couldn't be completely stopped, but they were slowed down. The human defenses were holding, barely. Back in the command center, Elias monitored the battle through a series of screens, his face grim as he watched the struggle unfold. They were fighting hard, but he knew that the Empire wasn't going to give up easily. They had to keep pushing. "Status report," Elias called out to Marlowe. "We've taken out their communications grid." Marlowe responded, his voice tight with focus. "Their fleet is disorganized, but they're starting to regroup. We need to hit them again before they can get organized." Elias nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Prepare the second wave. We take them down now. Full power." The second wave launched, and the battle escalated. Earth's forces pushed forward, attacking with everything they had, but the Empire was relentless. The alien forces were unlike anything humanity had faced before, but Elias could feel the strength of his people behind him. Every human soldier, every fighter, every person in the defense units knew what was at stake. As the battle raged on, Elias found himself on the bridge of the Defender, guiding his ship through the chaos. His eyes flicked over the holographic maps, his mind calculating their next moves. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity was more than just a footnote in the story of the universe. Out there, in the darkness of space, the Empire was discovering the truth. Earth wasn't weak. Earth was a force to be reckoned with. "Captain," one of the technicians called out, "we've located the Emperor's flagship." Elias's heart skipped a beat. Threx's ship, the command center of the Empire. If they could take that down, the battle could be won. "Prepare for an assault on the flagship," Elias ordered. "This ends now." The Defender shifted course, heading straight for the flagship. The Imperial fleet tried to stop them, but Earth's ships, fueled by desperation and determination, cut through the chaos, charging ahead. As the Defender neared the flagship, Elias's fingers tightened around the controls. They would make it. They had to. "Ready weapons," Elias ordered. "Lock on target." The Defender fired, its advanced weapons cutting through the space between them and the flagship. It wasn't just about brute force. Elias had one chance to take down the Emperor's ship. A few well-placed strikes could destroy the heart of the Empire's command. The explosion rocked the void of space as the flagship's shields faltered. Then, in an instant, it was gone. The flagship was no more. The Empire's greatest asset had been destroyed. The remaining Imperial fleet faltered. Their coordination broke down, and Earth's forces moved in, fighting with everything they had left. The tide of the battle had turned. Back on Earth, the alien invaders were pushed back, their advances halted by the sheer determination of humanity. Cities that had been under attack were liberated. The streets were filled with soldiers. But the fighting was far from over. Elias's heart raced as he watched the final moments of the battle unfold. The Empire had been defeated, but at what cost? Earth had fought for its survival, and they had won. But the war had taken its toll. Cities had been damaged. Lives had been lost. The battle had been brutal, but the message had been sent. The human spirit could not be broken. The galaxy would never again look at Earth as weak. As Elias stood on the bridge of the Defender, he looked out at the stars once again. The battle had been won, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. The Empire had learned that humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, and anyone who underestimated them would pay the price. "Captain Gray," Marlowe's voice interrupted his thoughts. "The battle is over. We did it." Elias's eyes hardened with determination. "This is just the beginning. We've shown the galaxy that Earth is no longer a target, but we still have a long way to go." And with that, Elias Gray turned his gaze to the stars, ready for whatever came next.